I'm going to be. I mean, obviously, this is a familiar tale for many people. I mean, this is sort of a world that so many of us have kind of got this kind of already established relationship with. So I'm interested to know what the kind of challenge was in kind of staying true to the kind of essence of that sort of familiarity, but bringing something very unique and very original to the table.
Well, I think that was the challenge, right? How do you bring something interesting and original to, territory that's been covered, quite well over the years? But I think our sort of entry point was to tell an origin story, to go as far back, into Rob's life and to really understand how he went from a young boy, to an outlaw.
Yeah, because obviously, despite wanting to create something original, did you kind of go back and watch any of the sort of old versions and draw from? Because obviously, there's literature and there's the kind of folklore aspects, but you've got the great Errol Flynn version, then you've got obviously the Russell Crowe, and even the Disney animation. Did you try and draw from places still to create the kind of bigger picture and world for the audience?
I mean, I think we've both been watching Robin Hood movies since we were, kids, and certainly I had, and I grew up watching the Errol Flynn movie. Which is what I love. But the inspiration for this really came from the earlier literature from Robin Hood, from like the 17th, 18th century, and even earlier in the 14th and 13th century. There are ballads written about Robin Hood that still exist from the 13th century. And a lot of those older ballads are a little bit more grounded, a little bit more believable. He's a slightly more, darker character. The lighter version of Robin Hood really comes from more recent times, from early 20th century, basically, and the early movies, the Douglas Fairbanks movie, for example. So I think the idea was to basically to do something that was more grounded, more believable, and as John said, to tell an origin story, which we haven't really seen before. Nobody really gets to see how Rob becomes an outlaw.
Yeah, because there is a kind of grit to this. So how important was that historical authenticity as well to this? Because it did feel like it had you could really contextualize this in the period that it was kind of set.
I think it was very important. It's something that actually came from Jonathan, who, is quite frankly much more well versed in in the history than I was entering it. So I had to play catch up, and read I don't know how many books that Jonathan had, sent my way. But it was really important to us to tie it to sort of the historical accuracy, but even more important to make it just historically believable, because we take liberties, of course, but it was a key sort of approach for us.
I wanted to ask just quickly about the kind of the process, because I know you guys were kind of writing this and creating this together. What's the kind of process? I always imagine this kind of romanticized, two guys sitting there with a kind of a paper, but all the ideas chucked into the kind of paper bin, kind of smoke in the air, or is it now just kind of sending ideas via emails? Or did you kind of get together to kind of sort of help get this story off the ground?
Kind of combo both. I mean, we talk every single day, every single day, and often at night, and we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, what we want to do. He'll write, I'll rewrite him, I'll write, he'll rewrite me. So, and creatively, it's really nice because we're almost always creatively aligned. I mean, there's very few creative differences that we've had to sort of work our way through, and the ones that we have had, we've just worked through pretty easily, to be quite frank. So it's been a great partnership in that sense.
It's basically two guys, as you said, in a room with their feet up, throwing ideas into a bin, seeing which one goes in, and that's it.
Well, whatever went in.
Very idyllic.
I want to talk about the casting process and specifically finding your kind of Rob and Marian. I mean, especially talking about Jack, because obviously, when you've got this kind of the lead, the title role in a show like this, to have a kind of newcomer, it's such a bold and courageous thing, and you don't see it enough, really. I think. Can you talk about finding him for this role, and also did you have to fight for him to be in this without? Because I know
yes.
Exactly. Yes. We always had the idea in an ideal world that he would be played by an unknown, by an up and coming, a fresh face, because we didn't want people to go into the show with a sort of preconceived notion of who Robin Hood was going to be and a career that they could relate to. We wanted someone new because that would mean that people would be watching Robin Hood in a fresh way, the character playing Robin Hood in a fresh way. So we saw, a huge number of people were auditioned.
Around the world, yeah.
But yeah, probably in total 1,000 people auditioned for the role. But we saw Jack very early on because he'd been in another movie, which partners, Hidden Pictures, Todd Lieberman, had produced. And Todd said very early on, you've got to look at this guy from Australia. And he, as soon as we saw him, I mean, we knew that was
immediate.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a long process of convincing people and MGM and Lionsgate that, we could make the show with him.
Yeah, but I think a good thing you did. I mean, what was it about him then, do you think? Because, I mean, you're right. He did. There's something, as soon as he appeared on the screen for the first time, you kind of knew he was the lead role. Does that make sense? You kind of got that star quality.
He has that star quality, but I think for both of us, he has a masculinity that is sometimes missing. I think in some of this younger group of actors. He's authentically masculine, but he has a sensitivity to him. He just has kind of a well of a lot of different things happening inside, and it just jumps off the screen. I mean, it did for us immediately. So
it's kind of instinctive.
Yeah, very instinctive.
We always had this idea that he might be played by an Australian actor. A lot of the current Australian actors have a kind of outdoorsiness to them, and they're kind of they have a grit to them. And so I wasn't surprised that he ended up being played by an Australian, and it's kind of a nice nod to Errol Flynn, who you forget that Errol Flynn was Australian as well, from Tasmania.
I didn't even know that.
There you go. Yeah, he was basically an Australian actor. Yeah. So
one man who's definitely though from the north of England is Sean Bean.
Yes.
Everybody else in the show is from the north of England.
Yeah, I mean it must be great to get him involved in this as well, because he brings. I mean, you talked about bringing that kind of more real grit to it. I mean, he has that in spades, doesn't he, as an actor?
Oh yeah, his gravitas in a real way, and he has sort of you feel like that guy growing up has probably been in fistfights. and he was. I remember early on we were talking, we need someone like a Sean Bean, someone that. But he was kind of a dream. He was on our dream list, and we just we were very fortunate that he reacted to the material.
And my final question, I mean, I'm just wondering, are you hoping to kind of maybe elaborate this story further, do sort of further seasons? I'm interested to know, when you write a first season for something, do you think about seasons to come in your mind? Do you leave little breadcrumbs? Or
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, from the early stages, we had an idea that if the show got made, we already knew where the story would be going and how it would open up, and the idea of kind of contextualizing the show in history, in sort of real history, helped a lot, because it meant there was a very big backdrop, a big canvas of historical events that we could sort of align the characters with, which has also not really been done so much before in other Robin Hood shows.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll get to meet you guys in about 2 years' time for part 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take
care.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Stefan.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys!
Hey,